Have you ever heard of Button Gwinnett or George Walton or Joseph Hughes? Have you ever heard of Arthur Middleton? William Packer? You ever heard of Carter Braxton? Have you ever heard of George Taylor and George Ross? Caesar Rodney? How about Francis Lewis or William Floyd? Abraham Clark? William Whipple? How about Stephen Hopkins or Oliver Wolcott or Matthew Thornton? Those are just some of the men that signed the Declaration of Independence, who most of you never heard of before. In 1776, the Continental Congress established the Committee of Five to draft a declaration to the world, setting forth the American colony's justification for seeking independence from Great Britain. It appointed John Adams of Massachusetts, Roger Sherman of Connecticut, Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania, Robert Livingston of New York, and Thomas Jefferson of Virginia. Now, Jefferson's draft was modified by Franklin and Adams and submitted to the Congress. And Congress made further modifications. There were 5 drafts in all. But the basic document remained largely unchanged from Jefferson's version. Now, I think it's understood by you, but I want to underscore the point that when these men signed this document, they had every reason to know that it would start a war that already really started, but it would advance a war, and that if they didn't win, they were done. They would be hanged. Their family would lose everything. Everything. They also knew that they were heavily outgunned. I mean, we're talking about the British Empire versus the colonies. They put everything on the line. They had so much at stake. But they insisted. They insisted on representative government. They insisted on low taxation through representative government. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, they insisted on being treated like individual human beings. They wanted their private property protected. And so the Declaration of Independence was drafted. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. These men who came together had all different kinds of backgrounds. They were Christian, but they had different denominations and different enthusiasm for their faith. But they believed in God. God is mentioned throughout the Declaration of Independence. So they believed in reason and science, but they didn't pray to them. So these men, different backgrounds, and they weren't all wealthy. Coming to Philadelphia, the Declaration of Independence. And they settled on these words. I won't read the whole thing. Some of this you've heard, but I want to break this down. Because much of this was borrowed from the second treatise on government written by John Locke, of whom Thomas Jefferson was a huge fan, and as I've told you before, who was the most popular philosopher during the Revolutionary period in the colonies. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. That is taken directly from Locke. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Locke believed, and obviously the founders did too, that you present to the world, you present to your fellow man the reasons for the actions you're taking. That it's the right thing to do. So your fellow man knows what it is that's motivating you. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Created equal, meaning none of us has the right to lord over another. None of us has the right to enslave another. Well, Mark, they had slavery at the time. I'll get to that. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, meaning these are rights that are not given by man to man, not given by government to man, and they can't be withdrawn or removed by man or government. You're born with these rights. They are unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have the right to live, to be free in your life, and to pursue your own ambitions. That to secure these rights, government are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. From the consent of the governed. That when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. But the founder said, and this is also Locke, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their form, their systems of government. The history of the present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. And to prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. So they list all the reasons, all the usurpations and injuries, which again is something that Locke encourages. And you can read it yourself, of course. Now, I'm bringing this up not just because it's the day before Independence Day. I'm bringing this up because this is an attitude, this is an inspiration, this is a mindset that we must embrace again. I'm not talking about overthrowing the government. I'm not talking about joining the militia. I'm talking about this as an attitude, a mindset that we must embrace again. We must share with our fellow citizens. We must inspire, invigorate. Now, I'm going to, over the course of the next year or two, have a number of suggestions on how we can do exactly what the founder said in the Declaration of Independence. Alter certain aspects of how our government functions. It's clear by now. It's clear by now that we lack, in so many of our public officials, elected and appointed, people of virtue and integrity and prudence. The Supreme Court's decision in Obamacare, in the Arizona immigration case, the D.C. Circuit panel's decision on greenhouse gases and cap and trade. These are outrageous acts by public officials who've lost their way. Over time, people with lifetime appointments, people who are elected to office and get to serve for a long period of time, they become cynical and deceitful in their view, not just of our constitutional system, but of the purpose of this government, to protect you, the individual, and the civil society. One way to try and address this, and I'll have many down the road, is to ensure more opportunity for others to participate in our governing process. That is, to break up the entrenched ruling class and to do it by constitutional design rather than happenstance from time to time. When we come back, I'll explain exactly what I mean.
Mark Levin.